Hello, Lizzie here. Today we're going to make Ariel, and Ariel is this beautiful little bag here, and it's quite a deep bottom wide little bag. I think perfect for the summer months, possibly perfect for the winter months when you're going to those Christmas dances and events. And she has a little chain handle, and obviously that's down to you, the length of the chain, but I figured for me I would want it this sort of length, so you can decide. So with Ariel, she has a little magnetic clasp in the front there, you can see. She has a little pocket here, so you can put perhaps your tickets in the front there, something that you need to grab quite quickly. And then inside, if I show you, she has two pockets, so two dividers that you can put your bits and bobs in. So maybe it's money one side and makeup in another, that sort of thing. But she's just a lovely little make, and like I say, she's got quite a wide bottom, so she sits nicely. So if you have her next to you on the table, somewhere like that, look, she's going to sit beautifully for you. So perfect for a wedding, perfect for, you know, those Christmas dances and those occasions. I suppose it depends what fabric you use, doesn't it, which will dictate where you actually use Ariel. But she's absolutely lovely. I love her, I hope you do. She's got little D-rings here so that the chain actually catches really lovely. Let's get it so it's straight, there we go. So you've got little sort of tabs there to make, so we're going to sort of do that practically straight away, and that's what she looks like, and I think she's super cute. We're using a lightweight Decaville. If you don't know what that is, then just pop along to Google or any search engine and pop that in, and you'll get something that comes up. If you're in the US, I'm sure you'll be able to find your equivalent of a Decaville Light. It's actually quite a strong stabilizer to give that structural look. I think this needed it. We're also using a cotton interfacing as well, just inside the pocket, the divider, but you know, any soft stabilizer will do for that. But there we are. So that is Ariel. So I'll pop her over to one side, and we'll get going straight away. So this is the pattern that you'll download from my website, lizzycurtis.com. I just love it. I'm going to change the photo on this actually. So the photo that you see will have a lot more greenery in it, because I took it into the garden and photographed it. So I'm going to try and keep to the pattern. I say that and then I always go off piece, but we'll try. So the first thing we're going to do is, now I'm making up mine in a beautiful African wax fabric, which, you know, if you've never seen it before, it's just, hello, it's just amazing. Isn't it glorious? So I don't know, you can make it in a really subtle colour, or you can go crazy. And the lining I've chosen, it's actually a bright, that's the wrong side, but it's a really bright yellow fabric to go inside. Oh, it's just delicious. Anyway, that's the actual pocket. We're not getting to the pocket just yet, so I'll just sort my bits out really. So there's lots of pattern pieces for this, and that's all on the pattern. When you download, you'll find all the bits and pieces you need. So the first thing we're going to do is to do these tabs. So you'll have the 4 pieces to stitch together. So you have a little shape like that. So it's right sides together. We're going to stitch around you're going to leave that bit open basically, which is the top, but we're going to stitch around those and all the way up 1/4 inch, and then we're going to turn through. Now with African wax fabrics, really, well, I suppose there is a right and a wrong. One side is slightly duller than the other, but I think that really, I'm just going to check, make sure I've got those the right way around. But it really doesn't really show, so you mustn't worry too much if you're using like batiks and that sort of thing. So we'll just go round the little tabs. And obviously, I mean, I'm using cream thread as I usually do, but obviously, you know, you could use a matching thread. So I'm just rotating my needle to make sure that I go around those curves. And please reduce your stitch length down to about 2 when you're stitching curves like this. It makes such a huge difference. So there's one. Let's just check and make sure that it's right, what I think is right sides together. I think it's a bit like batik, very difficult to tell. But anyway, you can decide. You don't have to use African wax fabric. You might want to use velvet or something like that. Ooh. Or maybe some upholstery fabric. But obviously be careful if your machine can take that sort of weight of fabric. So those are 2 tabs done. So I'm just cutting off the points. And then I'm just going to snip in a little bit around those curves. You could use pinking shears just to snip around. There's quite a lot of bulk here for a little tab, so you might want to cut some back. And pinking shears are really great for this type of thing, really take a lot of fabric out of your piece. But I'm just going to snip to try and get a fairly decent curve. Okay, so now we're going to turn this through, and I'm going to use my hemostats to get in there and just turn it through. So it might be a little bit fiddly for you. So I take them up to the end, and then I grab a piece of fabric and then just pull it through. Like I say, it might take a moment just to do that. So I'll turn these through and I'll come back to you. So I've turned them through. You just have a look on the overhead, you can see them there. So I'm just going to give them a little press, just so they're a little bit neater, so these edges aren't rolled up. And I've picked out just the dots in this fabric just to sort of enhance that. Now again, I'm going to be stitching in cream. You may well want to use a blue or whatever the colour your fabric is, but at least you'll see it stand out quite a bit. So what we're going to do then is, and I'll just go on the overhead again so you can see, I'm taking my D-ring there and I'm threading that D-ring through, you can see, and then all I'm going to do is fold that back. So if I fold it back like that, that will encompass our D-ring. If I hold it still, you can see how that looks. You can see how that looks. And I've just literally folded that back. I'll put a clip in there for the moment, but we're going to attach it to the gusset straight away. So again, let's just snip that raw end off there, that little thread. Get the other D-ring. Just thread that through and just fold it back, and try obviously to get those both the same. You can sort of put them down and measure them just to make sure that both the same. It's about a ½ inch you're turning back, so let's just do that again. Okay, and then get a clip again just to hold that in place. And when we put it on the gusset, you might just want to pop a pin through. So just have a little eyeball and make sure they're both the same. I think, well, I'm fairly happy with that. So then we need the gusset piece, and the gusset is all one piece, and I've cut my Decaville light out, and I've left a good ½ inch all the way around, because I don't want all that Decaville in the seams. It's quite a stiffening, and I don't want to have to sort of negotiate that with the seam allowances and everything, so I'm just leaving it as it is. So what we need to do is actually attach this to the bag gusset. Sorry, I'm mumbling. So I'm just going to get a pen. I've got a chalk pen here, which I think might work. If not, I've got a red heat erasable. And in the instructions, it tells you how far to measure down. So if I get my ruler out here, and you want to get the centre. So to get the centre, fold that in half. Do yourself a little crease there, so only you can see. There we go. It should. I knew it should go along the V's of the fabric. I deliberately fussy cut it like that, and I'm going from the raw edge down, and I'm going to make a little mark there, like that. I don't need the chalk pen. I didn't know if I was going to go on the blue or the white, and then my point goes where I've made that mark. So there's the point there. Sorry, it's just the tiniest of little marks, and the point goes right onto that mark. So you can see the clip is hopeless now. So we're going to just put my finger on there, take my clip away. I'm going to get a pin, and I'm just going to pin that in place. And it's quite stiff going through the Decaville, so you might want to get a real sharp pins, because some pins you have really don't cut the mustard when it comes to this sort of thing. So there we are, it's well and truly in place, which is great. So let's go down to the other side. Let's mark that again from the top. I'm pretty confident that my V's are still going to be in the middle. Do yourself a mark with your pen and your ruler, whatever is easiest for you. And then we're going to put the point onto the little mark we've made. Again, take your clip away, get a nice sharp pin and just pin that in place. And then while you're there, just eyeball that and make sure it hasn't wriggled, which mine just had. So let's just do that again. Just about caught it there. It's amazing how much how much fabric you're going through, and then with a Decaville as well, you need a really sharp pin, and sometimes our pins just aren't brilliant. So there's the two tabs, you can just about see them there. I love the spotty there. So now we're going to just top stitch those in place. So I'm going to take the pin out, and this is where, you know, if you're using, like I should really be using blue, but this is where it's going to really show. So what I want to do is I'm going to change to my zipper foot, because I want to be quite close to the D ring, not very close, but enough so I'm catching the little piece of fabric that we've folded underneath. So I'll just change my foot out. I do love using a zipper foot, and just make sure that's secure. So let's just pop that in place again. So I'm getting the point on the mark, folding my piece in. I'm just going straight across. So if we can have a look on the needle cam there, you can just about see that I'm going straight across the top, that there's my D-ring there. Obviously you want to be very careful that your machine is, your needle is nowhere near that metal, but you want to be fairly close. Take it steady, try and keep it neat. It's only a little piece, so whatever you stitch is going to be seen. So just be careful. Let's see if we can do this fairly quickly. And it should be rounded, but I think I've probably made mine more into a point now. I don't think it really matters, to be honest. Now, even though it's a top stitch, I do recommend you keep your stitch length at about 2.5 if you want. Normally I'll say whack it up to 3, but this is structural. This has got to be strong. So when you come back, a couple of little back stitches and just trim your threads away. There we go. We can just about see, if I show it to the front, you can just about see what that looks like. And your D-ring is still attached. It's still loose. So let's do the other side. And take the pin out. Get as close to that D-ring as we can. Go straight across. So you know you've caught your the little fold that you made, and then just come round to the tip and a nice turn to get that lovely shape. I think I'm brave doing this in a cream thread, but that's what I only ever use. So I think you have to learn to be really neat. And there's the second one in place there now, look. And you can see that the D-ring is still nice and loose. Good. So let's just take the zipper foot off, put the regular foot back on again. To be honest, I could stitch the whole thing with the zipper foot, but it's bad practice. I like to put my 1/4 inch foot back on again. I suppose it's just being lazy. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the poppers. I'm following the pattern as best I can. We're going to put the poppers on the pocket. Now the popper, the magnetic closure, goes on the front of the pocket, and it's always there's a fat bit and a thin bit, and it's the fat bit that goes onto the pocket. It's the thin part that goes onto the flap of the bag, because you don't want that heavy weight of the fatter part. So I've already stabilised my fabric with a little bit of H250 stabiliser, which will make a huge difference to the strength. I've got a screw punch tool, forgetting now what I was using, a screw punch tool to actually create the holes that I need, and I'm just going to measure down and mark this. So let's have a look. Okay, so I'm going to fold my fabric in half and give it a squidge to get a crease line. Let's bring it there so you can see. Now obviously the popper goes on the front of your pocket, so I can see my crease line there. It's right dead centre in my circle. That was lucky. I kind of think it was planned. And then we need to measure down from there. So it's going to be just on the top of the little circle there. And then what you can do is you can mark, I mean, you can do this you can do it this side. You can do it this side, and that would probably be easier for you to see. And then it's going to sit right in the centre. Let's just make sure we've got that in the centre. Yeah. You can see the little square is perfectly placed. And then we'll take our backing, our washer, and you're just making 2 little marks of where the holes are going to go to put the legs through of the magnetic closure. And this is the fat part, and this is the thin part, and you can see quite clearly the difference between the two. So just 2 little holes then, 1, 2. We're going to put the 2 legs from the front to the back like that. It's quite sweet, isn't it? And then put the washer on, and then just open up the legs. And I use a pair of scissors. I used to be able to use my thumbs, well I can't anymore. I don't have that strength. It's terrible, isn't it? And then I just use the back of the scissors flat and just push down. And obviously you don't want to use your best scissors. You know, be sensible. But there we are. So there's the snap in place, the magnetic closure. It looks really sweet on the top of that circle, doesn't it? Okay, so that's that part done. And then what we're going to do is, I'm following the pattern here, guys. So I'm going to pop the pocket pieces together. Now, so it's right sides together. So your lining and your pocket front, right sides together. Okay, and you're going to stitch just across the top, just that one seam there. 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way across. There we are. So that's stitched all the way across, you see. Okay, just across there, and we're going to just fold that back and make it nice and neat. In fact, I think I would really like to iron this, so let's get the iron in. Do you know, ironing as you go has got to be the best thing ever, because it keeps everything really super neat and your seams are so crispy and lovely. So I'm going to iron from the inside first, just to get that seam looking lovely. Let's do that again. I don't think my iron was that hot enough. So I'm opening up the seam, and then when I do fold it back, it should fold back absolutely perfectly. And I think I'll top stitch this as well. I'm not sure if I top stitched the pocket. Yes, I did. Just checking. I change things as I go along, and you'll do the same. Maybe you'll look at it and think, oh, I don't want to top stitch that, but actually it's worth it. So look, there we are. So there's the pocket, that's the lining, there's the front. So about a 1/16 of an inch. And of course this is decorative, so you could whack the stitch length up to 3. All the way across. just trim that thread off. There we go, you can see, really lovely and neat. So find your pocket front. Now my two, there we are, so that's the back piece I'm going to use. Now this, the front piece, I was running out of fabric. I was using a fat quarter that had a definite, you can tell, a definite pattern to it. So with the front piece I had my little circle off, but in actual fact once I put my pocket on, you're never going to notice, and the flap's going to come across and it's going to look beautiful. So what I want you to do now is to stitch the pocket in place, so you're basting all the way around, just to put those pocket pieces together onto the front. And what I suggest you do is to line up your pocket absolutely beautifully either side, because if it goes slightly off like that you will notice it, and if that happens please undo it and do it again. So there we go. So I've put my pieces together, you can see, I'm not sure that's straight. The trouble is you're working with circles, and sometimes circles make your eyes go squidgy. And I have cut notches in this and they should all line up, but there we are. My lining's just slightly out of it, but I think that's better. So I'm just going to stitch those together. I'm going to do it from the back of the pocket. So this is just about 1/8 of an inch. It's a cleaner line, that's why I'm doing it on the back of the pocket, or the back of the bag I should say. So like I say, it's about 1/8 of an inch all the way round, and all you're doing is securing those two pieces together. And like I said, if it goes off a bit squidgy, then readjust it, undo it, readjust it and do it again. So let's just trim that back a bit. You might, with everything like this, because everything is hand cut, you might find that you need to just trim your pattern pieces from time to time. So there's our bag front and our pocket done. So moving on to the next stage, I'm just making sure I'm doing it the same as you. What we're going to do is to attach the outer bag pieces to the gusset. So do you remember we've had the gusset like this? We're going to now attach that to our bag front and our bag back. It doesn't matter which one you do first, but what I do want you to do is to find the center of your, now I seamed my fabric to make sure that I had that pattern going all the same way. So although the pattern says cut on the fold, I actually added 1/4 of an inch and I seamed it. You can't see it, I don't think you can see it, but there is a seam going down there. So if you're using directional fabric, make sure that your fabric goes up like that, and then cut another one that goes up. Give yourself a 1/4 inch seam allowance and piece the two pieces together. So right sides together, I'm going to match my seam line to my center notch, because I cut a little notch at the center of my bag front. I'm just going to put a clip in there. I'm just going to feed it round. Now I know this fits, but you might want to pin it all the way around. But I know it's fine. What you can do with this, although it's curved, I call this the straight bit. And what you can do is just snip into it every 1/2 inch or so, and that will help you, and not 1/4 of an inch in, let's say 1/8 of an inch, and that will help you put the straightish edge onto the curved edge. It just bends it quite nicely. So I'll just snip all the way along. And I'll do the same the other side when we get to it. So right sides together, you're now going to stitch, let me show that, you're now stitching the gusset onto the front or the back of the bag. So let's do that now. 1/4 inch seam allowance again. Now although I've got it clipped there, you can see I've got it clipped here, I'll probably take it out in a minute because it gets in my way. You must do whatever is comfortable for you. You might want to pin it every inch or so to make sure that that fits beautifully, or use your quilting clips. Personally I like it just free and easy, so that clip's going to come out any minute. So let's just get these two together. So already I want to take it out, but I'm going to try and be good. Let's just move that over a little bit. It's got to come out. I just like to pick it up and hold it, and I find it just much easier to stitch. Oops, something was caught. So all the way around. And of course this Decaville isn't the easiest of fabrics. It's a bit like my love-hate relationship with foam. Yeah. So just bring it round. So just continue until you've gone all the way around. Just be aware that you're stitching circles onto straights. So you'd be aware that with the circle, obviously you're stitching on the bias kind of thing, so it might stretch a little bit, so just be aware of that. So that's one side done. Okay, so now we need to stitch the other, and again make a notch here. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a notch just right in the center there, and match that up to the center of your gusset. Put a pin in, put a clip in, whatever it takes for you to feel comfortable with stitching these together. Now I haven't snipped this one, but obviously you can. I would just bring the ends together so they fit. And again, like I said, we're using the Decaville, so it's quite a stiff thing to use. Just make sure you're comfortable, make sure that all of that fits. And you'll see in the pattern that you can pin all the way around and make sure that it's working for you. And then stitch the back on. Oops, I need to stitch the gusset first. I like to stitch the gusset on the top and the curve underneath, and I do that to all the bags I make. You might find it easier another way, but that's what I like to do. So like I said before, don't forget you're stitching straightish pieces onto a curve. Make sure that the raw edges are absolutely sitting on top of each other. If you don't, you'll find that I'm going to take that pin out. You'll find that it might affect the fit. So top tip, make sure that the raw edges are sitting right on top of each other. So I'll go around this, come back to me in a minute. Oh, hi there. Thank you for stopping by. I was going to talk to you about the Gold Club actually, and I'm preparing for our Facebook Live tonight, because every week on Facebook in the Gold Sewing group, we actually do other things like free motion embroidery tonight. So the Gold Online Sewing Group, what is all that about? Well, if you go to my website, lizzycurtis.com, you'll see the sign up tab. Click on that, you get a choice of membership, but what you do get every month is 2 different super patterns, especially for you. And do you know what? When they go in the shop the next month, they're $4.99 each. So this is an absolute bargain for £5, about $6.20, something like that. You're getting those 2 full patterns with video tutorials as well. So why don't you join up today and join the online sewing group, which is known as the Gold Sewing Group. I'll see you there. Bye. So there's our bag put together. That's our outer bag. And you can tell with the Decaville, it's really strong, and you already look, it's sitting up beautifully. Let's just turn it through. So we'll have the right side showing just for a moment, just so we can get a feel of it. We can have a look at it and see if we like what we've done. There we go. Got some thread sticking out there, so I need to trim those back. I'll do that in a minute. And you could at this stage give this a quick press if you've got like a ham, you know, a quilting ham or ironing ham, then that's a good time to get it out and press these curves beautifully. It's not a quilting ham, it's a dressmaking ham. Got quilting on the brain. So there we are. So that's what it looks like so far. I love it that the fussy cutting has allowed for that sort of look both sides, so I'm really pleased with that. So if we go on to the next page, We're now going to do the magnetic closure in the flap. So with the flap, you've got obviously the flap itself. You can see I've tried to get my circles in there as much as I can. And then I've got the lining. Now the lining will have a square on the back of it to take the other side of the popper. So once again, if we go to the overhead, I've got the pieces that I need. I need the washer, I need the magnetic closure, I've got my mat to make my holes with. I'll fold this so it's the right size together and I can see my stabilizer. And then from that you can mark where this is going to be. So it's 3 inches down from the straight edge, so that makes it easy. You can see I've got a little notch in there already, so I know that's where the center is. So I'll just line that up, put a little line there, and that's where my other half of the magnetic closure is going to go. Put my little washer over the top and do my 2 marks. And I'll just get my screw punch tool. These tools are readily available on Amazon or any good search engine if you just put in screw punch tool. So we're going to put the flat side through the lining like that. There we go. You can see how that looks. Flip it over. Put the washer on the back like that, and then like I said before, I use the back of my scissors. If you're at all worried obviously about damaging your scissors, use your kitchen scissors or a blunt knife or something like that that you're comfortable with, and then I just put my scissors, flat edge of my scissors over the top and give it a squidge, and that helps to keep the legs nice and flat. And there's the other side of our lining side of our flap. So that's done now. So I can get rid of my little silicone sheet there. So what we're going to do now is right sides together of our outer pieces of the flap. So right sides together, we're going to stitch the curved edge only. We're going to leave this straight edge unstitched. So we're just going to go all the way around with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Do make sure that your Decaville or whatever stabilizer you use is well and truly stuck. And a good little tip there is use a spray. So if you use maybe a starch spray, something like that, it really helps bond the fabric and the Decaville together. So all the way around. You might find as you're stitching that your magnetic closure sticks to the bed of your machine. You wonder why your fabric's not moving, and it's because it's stuck to the bed of your machine. So once again, you can cut around that. You can see I'll use my pinking shears this time. Let's get those out of my drawer, and I'll just trim around. It does make quite a difference using the pinking shears. It takes a lot of the fabric away. So it's always useful to have a pair. There we go. I will tidy up afterwards. And then you're going to turn through. We're going to top stitch the flap. So once again, you will use a thread that matches your fabric. Or if you're brave, you'll use a contrast like I am. I'm not brave, it's just that's what I always have in my machine. So let's switch the iron on. And what you want to do is to make sure that you don't see, well, the less lining you see, the better. You might just see a slight shadow. You can just about see that slight shadow all the way around. But try and make sure that it's tucked under as best you can. So while that is just heating up, I've got a little bit there I want to just trim away. Just the slither. So just push that out and give it a press. Gosh, that's a bit hot. That iron is ferocious. And then around. So depending on what lining you use will depend on whether you get this lovely sort of shadow effect, or whether it kind of blends in. So let's pop that to one side. So there's our flap. So what we're going to do is actually we're going to top stitch all the way around that, and then I'm going to join the two pieces together along the top. And you can see, if I put my hand there, there is a little clip, a little V, because we're going to need that shortly when we put it onto the main part of the bag. So top stitch from the front. Again, you might want to, because it is just a top stitch and not structural, you might want to up your stitch length to 3. It's up to you. It's a curve, so sometimes it's better with curves to stick with a smaller stitch length. Have a little practice first and see what you think. So all the way around, just take your time. There's no rush, no rushing, no rushing. So straight across the top, just to join those two layers together. So it's about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. So again, I'm just going to neaten that up. I don't know if it's my bad cutting or the fabric slipped. It doesn't matter. Just cutting off a thread there. So there is the flap done with the top stitching going all the way around, and it's caught everything at the back as well. So I'm really pleased with that. So moving on to the next stage. We're going to actually attach this now to the body of the bag. Now, the reason why I didn't do that before I put the bag together is because the flap actually comes over the gusset. It's almost halfway. So if you thought, oh, well, I'll attach the flap before you put the bag together, then don't, because this whole thing wraps around and it comes over the gusset. So this is where we need to find that centre. And of course I can't see it, so I'm going to cut another one. Let's just pop that in there, make a crease. A little clip. Yeah, I just want to make sure they're lined up okay. So I've made a little clip at the back. So bearing in mind this is the front with the pocket. Okay, so obviously this bit is the back. And we're going to do right sides together with our flap. So let's mark, we're just lining up our V's. So do make sure that that V is in the centre. Put a clip in and then it comes around. I want you to see this. So this is my seam line here. You just about make it out. And this is the end of my flap and it goes over the top of my gusset. Okay, and that's exactly how it should be. I tried it several different ways and I found this to look the best. So again, you're just bringing that around and making sure that it's equal. No, mine's not, so I'm going to have another little look at it. Might move that along just slightly. And this is where marking those the centre of everything is absolutely ideal. So just, there we are. I think I'm happy with that now. Just want to check, double check, make sure that I am happy. Yep, so so there's the back of the bag there. So I've got right sides together. So the right side of the flap is on the right side of the bag, okay, or the back of the bag. Make sure it is the back, and then we're just going to tack that in place now. Now I'm going to go inside my bag to stitch. If you've got a free arm facility, this can fit over the free arm and you can absolutely stitch it like that, but I don't have that luxury, so I'm going to stitch it on the inside of my bag. So I'll start a little way away from where my flap starts. Make sure it's still sitting nicely. You don't want the flap to sort of stick up. You want it all to lie flat. So you might want to pin it or use your quilting clips, whatever it takes to keep that nice and flat. Let's just get that. I've just got a seam that doesn't want to sit nicely. There we are. So And again, you're stitching about 1/8 of an inch. And I would suggest that once you've stitched it, please check it again to make sure that you're happy with the position of that flap. So again, about 1/8 of an inch. And again, I'm coming to that side seam again. So I'm just making sure that's sitting nice and flat. And like I said, I'm stitching on the inside of my bag because that's easier for me. So let's have another little look at it. So I'm happy with how that looks. So can you see it comes just over to the side? If you have a look where the D-ring is, if you think that's the centre of the gusset, so you know that's quite close. And when you look at this side, it looks exactly the same. Phew. So there's the main part of our bag done. So that's brilliant. We're sort of almost, well, we're well beyond halfway. So that's absolutely super. So the next thing we're going to do is the inside. Now the inside is quite interesting because we've got that central divider and then we've got the outer pockets, if you like. So the actual gusset is cut into 2 pieces because we want to make up our central divider and then attach the gusset either side of it. It'll all make sense. So right sides together with your 2 divider pieces. Okay, so they're the same size as your bag. What we're going to do is stitch a 1/4 inch seam allowance across the top, and we're going to fold that through, top stitch if you want. So this is the 2 pieces that I've lined, stabilised with the cotton interfacing. Okay, now because this is a straight edge and not a curve, I'm just going to finger press that. Because it's straight, it's easy. With the curved piece of the pocket, I wanted to iron that. And then just top stitch again about, well, I like about 1/16 of an inch. If you can't manage that, go for 1/8. But don't ever stitch anything 1/4 of an inch top stitching. It's too ugly. So straight across. And there's our divider done. I've got something in there. And a piece of fabric, I could see it. So there's our divider done. So now what we need to do is to attach our gusset pieces. Now these are cut on the fold, and you'll have I don't know if it's hard to see. Yeah, you can see it. This is on the fold. This is the fold up here. This is the straight edge, which goes now to our divider. And this is the curved edge that goes to the bag. So it says on the pattern that this is the straight edge. It's not easy to see once you've cut it out. Please keep referring back to your pattern piece and make sure that you're using the right bit. So this is the straight and this is the curved. And it's the straight edge that we're attaching to our divider. Okay, and again you want to measure up where the middles are. So if you put a notch on there, and then just make sure that your your gusset is sitting exactly in the center. So that's what I do. Right sides together, make sure that's in the center, and then I always stitch the straight edge, which is this, onto the curve. So match up the seams at the top. Okay. So don't forget, you need to overhang this by 1/4 of an inch. Okay. And then you're just going to attach it. So again, just make sure, take your time, those raw edges sit nicely on top of each other. They want to be absolutely parallel to each other. Right, so I'll stitch around this. I'll see you in a minute. So there's 1/2 of the gusset done. So don't forget that we're going to put a second part on. So this part that you can see that's loose, show it that way, this is the part that goes on to the bag lining. Okay, this is the body of the bag that fits on this part. So on this half we need to stitch our other gusset. Okay, and it's easier to do it one piece at a time, trust me on that one. So do the one, then do the second one, but don't forget to leave that 1/4 inch at the top. So let's find the straight edge. So let's do it that way you can see. So there's our straight edge. Don't forget this is on the fold, and this is our curved. So it's the straight edge that we stitch onto our divider. So you're leaving, if I show you on the overhead, because this is, you'll probably see this a little better on the overhead. So can you see I've left a 1/4 inch, or just a little bit more actually, over the top of my divider there. So when we start stitching the second piece on, we do exactly the same. We leave a 1/4 inch over the top like that, and then we start stitching from there and come all the way around. But don't forget to line up your notches at the bottom and pin it all the way around just like you did before, just to make sure you're comfortable with it. And now follow the stitching, but you want to stitch the 2 gusset pieces together. Okay, so you're starting from the very top of the gusset, whereas before we started a 1/4 inch down onto the bag piece, the divider. This time you're actually stitching right from the top. I hope that makes sense. Now of course with the first lot of stitching you could do it at 1/8 of an inch, or a little bit smaller than a 1/4 of an inch, but to be perfectly honest, you mustn't forget to leave a turning gap, but that's in the main bag. Oh, I was just thinking that myself. I haven't got to the bag pieces yet. We get a bit paranoid, don't we? So just easy, gently all the way around. Just take your time. Make sure that your notches match up, not bad, about 1/8 of an inch out. And then just make sure that first piece of gusset doesn't get caught up in your stitching. That would be such a shame. And if you don't cover your original stitches, please don't worry, this is in the lining, so nobody's going to see that except you. If this sort of thing that you're going to gift, then I suggest that first row stitching on that first half is 1/8 of an inch, and then this second piece will cover all of that stitching up. So it's just slowly and come right up to the top. So when you come up to the top, so we're there now, you come right off. So let me turn it on my machine and you get the needle view. There we go. So I'm coming right off the top here. Okay, I'm not stopping at the top of the divider, I'm coming right off here. Little back stitch just to hold. So there we are. That's our divider stitched in. So really all you need to think about now is that is just a gusset. Just happens to have an extra piece of fabric in the middle of it. And of course don't forget, now we're going to stitch the main bag lining pieces to this. You do want to remember to leave that turning gap. And do you know what? I always do that pretty soon, because you know you're going to forget by the time you've done the second piece. So once again, mark your fabric so you've got that centre line. I'll just do a crease line. It's right sides together with your gusset. Put a pin in if you want, but because none of this is stabilised, don't forget that it could easily stretch, so just be careful. So now we're stitching the top of the gusset, the raw edge at the top of the gusset to the top edge of our body piece. In fact, I'm going to take that pin out because I know it'll annoy me, but please you do it. So just follow around now, 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm going to do my turning gap. So little back stitch, break my thread. Now this is where actually you need to make sure that you don't kind of have, where you're on your turning gap, you don't want the body of the bag to be a big gap and then the gusset to be a little gap, where you need the same amount of fabric. So just work your way around with your fingers just to make sure your fabric is sitting nicely. Now we're using Decaville light, so where I would normally do maybe a 4-inch gap or 3-inch gap, I would go just a little bit more than that, because it's quite a thick fabric to try and get through a small gap. So hopefully that's right. So start stitching again, because you know I'd forget. Oh, I'm just thinking of the consequences. So just ease your way round. If you've pinned this or clipped this together, you know it's going to fit. Just, you could clip into the gusset piece like we did in the body part. Whatever you want to do is fine. Whatever it takes. Do you know what? You could even glue it. Just the edge of your fabric. Just glue, 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 glue all the way around. Because that way you can manipulate it as you're gluing, especially if you're using something that's kind of semi-permanent, like an English paper piecing glue stick, that type of thing, where you can manipulate the fabric, or use some quilting tape and just put those edges together. That's going to save you perhaps a lot of unpicking. Does it sound like I talk from experience? Okay, so we're coming up to the top. So don't forget, you're going to stitch, can you see, the top of the gusset to the top of your bag piece. Look at that, isn't that so pretty? I love yellow. Look, and there's my turning gap. So now we're just going to do the other one. I love this yellow. It's just making me so happy. So fold it in half, get your center point, clip it, cut a little V out, and then offer it up to your gusset where you may already have a V. Pop a pin in just for that moment. We don't need to worry about a turning gap. And all we're going to do is stitch that gusset to the lining body part. In fact, I'm going to take that pin out. I don't know why I bother putting it in, really. So just whiz your way around as slowly as you want to whiz. And don't forget, that bag body part is stretchy because there's no stabiliser. So do be careful you don't pull it. Or if you do, well, just be careful. Just be careful. It's too tempting to pull on a circular piece of fabric like this. So. So a little bit at a time. So I'll stop there. Just going to make sure these fit nicely. Yeah, happy with that. So just take it round. Take it up to the top. There we go. So there is the lining all put together now. You can see there's the divider just there. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put the right side of the bag into the right side of the lining. Now you might think, well, how can we do that? Because there's a divider. How does that work? Do you know what? It does not matter where you put this bag. You can put the bag into this side or that side. It really doesn't matter. It's going to take a little bit of a fiddle to get all that top edge to sit nicely together, but it really doesn't matter which side you put that bag in. So all of that bag will go into there. Okay. And I'm not going to bother to think about where my turning gap is or anything like that. Wherever that turning gap ends up is fine by me. So let's pop it in there. So like I said, take a little bit jiggery pokery, but we're there. And now all you're going to do is stitch everything together. The main thing for me is to make sure that you've got all of your seams sitting on top of each other. So look for your seams. So we might need to move that bag a little bit further around. but I found this to be the best way to put the two pieces together, and that is the body part, the outer body. I'm going to use clips, the outer to go on the inside of the lining. So just get that lined up. And again, if you've got your notches, then again, those are your kind of benchmarks, aren't they? So let's just get this one sorted. So the side seams, and don't forget they're not going to match up with the flap. So if you're thinking the flap should be at the side seam of the lining, it absolutely isn't. It should be just about in the middle of your gusset. And then the side seams of the gusset and the front. Like I say, it'll take a little bit of jiggery pokery to get that to sit nicely. Right, so I'm going to start from the centre back because that's where I've got a nice flat piece to start. So just start in the middle. Again, I'm going to go on the inside of the bag, 1/4 inch, and make it a generous 1/4 inch this time so it's nice and strong. So you're going all the way around the top of the bag. So just keeping an eye on the gusset, making sure they're sitting on top of each other. Because they're shaped pieces, they might want to wriggle a little bit. Got to tell it who's boss. I'm taking all my clips out now. So when you get to the part where you know, the body part is in one of the divider pockets, so when you get to the other side, it'll feel a little strange because it's a bit loose and flappy. It doesn't seem to want to fit. It absolutely does. It's just that divider that's kind of altering the design for you, reshaping it for you, if you like. So come all the way round, just make sure those seams match. So just do a little bit at a time. Don't forget that divider is, and I'm just pulling it, that divider is going to sort of, it just makes it a little bit awkward. So just take your time. But it should fit 100%. So just a little bit of jiggery pokery. You'll see when you come to stitch it, you'll think that looks a little odd, but just do 1 inch or 2 and then readjust your fabric and you'll see what I mean. So so this is what you end up with. It always looks awful, doesn't it? But you want to find your turning gap and just start pushing it through. And because we've had to put the main body bag inside one of those dividers, it'll look like you're getting in a muddle, but just keep turning it through. Honestly, it will come right. It's just working it, well, obviously you've got to realise that this is your outer, so just make sure that's on the outside. Once you've done that, I've got a few little threads there I can get rid of. There's a thread there. Okay, so there we are. So now look, that's your lining there. There's your divider. So get that. There's your divider there. But once you pop it inside your bag, just pop it in like you normally would. Okay. Needs a really good press. I think I top stitched around mine. No, I didn't. Just pressed it well. Okay. So you might want to top stitch all the way around, but it's a little bit tricky because you've got these dividers. So let me show you. So I've got some loose threads. There's your divider sitting in there. Can you see? So that's why we did that seam. If you were doing something similar where the bag is square, you perhaps wouldn't need to have two pieces. You could just fold the gusset over the top of it and stitch it in that way. But I found this the easiest way. So it needs a good press. It needs the turning gap closed. Oh, it looks gorgeous. So what you'll find is, I'm trying to do it without pressing it, what you'll find is that this flap curves around. Can you see? It curves around towards the front. It's not quite there. And then when you go to close this up, obviously you can do the turning gap. When you come to close it up, it makes a nice little neat fold at the top. Can you see how that looks? It's really nice, isn't it? I love my two circles. So let's just pop that together. There we go. And because there's nothing in it, it needs sort of padding out really to make it look gorgeous. And it needs a press and a padding out. It doesn't look too bad. Can you see how the pattern comes around the side? Because that's deliberate, so it's a bit of fussy cutting. It's my bullseye bag, isn't it? My bullseye bag. Okay, so then all we're going to do is clip the chain on. Now, obviously, try and get your hardware to be the same. Unfortunately, I only had silver D-rings, and I got ever such a lot of them. So I'm kind of I'm using a gold chain, but gold would have been better, or another silver chain. Let's just unclip that. There we go. So there we are. I love it. I love that fabric. Look at that. That is so classy. I love it. Needs a jolly good press. It also needs, you know, it needs stuffing. And that's a good idea to steam it stuffed. So get all your scrap wadding, absolutely cram full of wadding, you know, stuff it in and then steam it. And that way it'll retain its shape. I'm laughing because it just looks so cool. So there we are. So don't forget, you need to give that a good iron, stitch your turning gap closed, and like I said, when you fold it, those the flap it kind of curves around slightly. So when you fold it, you actually get quite a nice little curve there. I don't know if we can see on my original one how that looks. That looks like that. It's a definite fold. Anyway, there we are. So this is Ariel. I love her so much, and she's available as a download on my website, lizzycurtis.com, and I think you'll make loads.